Good morning, grade 7, Miss. How are you today? Today we will continue the lesson, multiplying and dividing real numbers on page 38. And at the end of this lesson and the lesson before it, our let's say, objective is to know how to make operations with real number, okay? To know how to deal with the real numbers in addition or subtraction or multiplication or in division, okay? Now, I just want to, before we take the new slides or before we actually start solving the problems, I just want to remind you with the, let's say, the multiplication and division rules. Now, if both of the, factors are actually positive, when you multiply them with each other, the product and the quotient are positive. If one of them is negative, it will be negative. The answer will be negative. As I say about it before, maybe we can say about the negative sign, it's stronger. It's stronger than the positive sign, so it keeps itself. Now, if both negative, actually the answer or the product and the quotient will be positive. But if one negative of them, actually the answer or the product and the quotient will be positive. Will be negative if one of them only is negative. Now, then we say if we multiply and divide with 0. Now, it's okay with me unless 0 is in the denominator. I cannot divide any number by 0. It will be undefined number. I cannot deal it with other real numbers. It's not a real number actually. It's not a real number. Then this is very important. I'm talking about the reciprocal, and like the reciprocal, the same as multiplicative inverse. Okay, the multiplicative inverse is actually when the numerator equals 1. While the reciprocal is actually a fraction that is flipped over from any other fraction. So if you see 2 over 3, so the reciprocal for 2 over 3 is 3 over 2. Okay, while 1 over or a, let's say the reciprocal for a is 1 over a. It's the same reciprocal and multiplicative inverse. The same one, the multiplicative inverse is for only 1, 1 over any number. Okay. Now, let's go and start. And before that, it's important for us to know how we divide fractions. It's very important. Actually, if you divide a fraction by a fraction, this means that there is a fraction in the divisor. Okay, there is a fraction in the divisor. I convert my division into multiplication, but in a condition that I take the reciprocal of the divisor, the reciprocal of the fraction or the ratio that comes after the division. The fraction, if there is a fraction before the division sign, I don't touch it. I leave it as it. Okay, so as you can notice here, 1 over 3 divided by 3 over 5 equals to 1 over 3. I never change it. Multiply by instead of division, okay, sign, and then you flip the number after it, so it will be instead of 3 over 5, 5 over 3. Okay, miss? So now let's please, now I want you, now what we will do, I will keep the slides open, okay, and we will go and solve got it 1, okay, I want you to solve it, got it 1, and problem 1 we already did yesterday, actually mostly we did it, okay, so let's keep this slide open and try to solve problem 1 and problem 2. And got it too. We will solve it together. Then we will go and talk about the square root it's very important for us to speak about the square root. So before we start solving, I want to tell you that now it's important to know that if your square root is negative, it doesn't mean that we are finding the square root of 20 or negative 25. No, miss. Because if you have a sign which is negative sign under the square root, it's undefined number. It's not defined. I cannot deal with it in math. It's not real number actually. So if I ask you to find out the square root, you know that for every positive number, we have what negative and positive square root. How is that, miss? We said before that if we multiply negative 3 times negative 3, what's the answer? 9. So the square root of 9, it could be negative 3. Why not? It could be. And the square root of 9, is it 3? Yes, definitely it's 3. But I mean that it could be negative 3, but if the sign is, if you want to keep it or to use it, you should, or you have to leave it outside the square root. Under the square root, there it mustn't be any kind of negative sign. Okay? There shouldn't be negative sign at all. Now, so that if I give you a radical, okay, you can use, and if you see before in front of the radical a plus minus, it means that the answer of the square root of the answer of the radical, it could be positive and it could be negative. Because if it's positive, actually, because you know what does it mean, the square root? It's actually the square of a complete or a perfect square, right? Of a perfect square. So what comes in the under the square root is the perfect square. So actually, if you multiply a number by itself with negative sign, it means negative 1 times negative 1, it will be 1. Negative 6 times negative 6, it will be 36. Okay, so you can find 36 under the square root, and you can visualize that the square root of 36, it could be, a 6, and it could be negative 6. Okay, but you cannot find for me square root of negative 36 and make the negative under the square root or the radical symbol. You cannot, miss. You can't. It's undefined number. Okay. Yeah, let's go now and solve problems. You can see here, I will also keep this open, simplifying square roots. You find out the square root of 64 is 8. Well, if they mention for you that they want the square root positive or positive negative square root of 16, you have to mention that or say that it's a plus minus 4. Okay? And they want negative times the square root of 121, so it's negative 11. As you keep the negative outside the square root, no problem with me, miss. Okay, يلا معلش, I skip on problem 1, we will go back to it and then solve cut it for problem 2. Okay, miss.